I'd like to call to order the Carson City Airport Authority meeting for March 21st, Wednesday at 6 p.m., Carson City Community Center, 851 East William Street, Carson City, Nevada. Madam Secretary, would you call the roll?
Chairperson Law.
Here.
Vice Chairperson Vowell.
Here.
Member Barrett.
Here.
Member Golden.
Here.
Member Harris.
Here.
Member Harvey.
Here.
Member Rogers.
Here.
Quorum is present.
Thank you. Would you join me for the Pledge of Allegiance?
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Item C is approval of the minutes of the past meetings of the Airport Authority. We have two sets of minutes, one from the February 21st meeting, one from the meeting last week, the special meeting at the terminal. Are there any comments, corrections to those minutes? None heard. Do I have a motion to approve those minutes? And that was a motion by Vice Chair Vowell. Do I have a second?
Second.
Member Bennett is a second. All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? None heard. Motion passes. Item D, modification of the agenda. The chairman reserves the right to modify the agenda in order most effectively process the agenda items. Items may be taken out of order, may be combined for consideration by the authority, and may be pulled or removed from the agenda at any time. Does anyone have any comment tonight about changing the order or the content of the agenda? Nothing heard. I don't intend to change the agenda's order. Members of the public who wish to address the airport may speak on agendized and non-agendized matters related to the airport. Comments are limited to 3 minutes per person or topic. If your item requires extended discussion, please request the chairman to calendar the matter for a future Airport Authority meeting. Is there any public comment at this time? None heard. We will move forward. Item F1, for possible action, approval of contract of employment of the new airport manager. Mr. Harvey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In your packet, you had information from Steve Takis, our counsel, that basically gave an overview of the agreement, the discussion that occurred with Mr. Takis, I, and Mr. Moan. So you can see you have an employment agreement in front of you for approval tonight. The slight differences on that agreement from the original, of course, which was blank. That is, it was within the approved range at $80,000 a year. He is declining the benefit health insurance because he has his own through his retirement. So we're paying him a $557.38 a month in lieu of that benefit to take care of that. It was a year-to-year. We modified the terms throughout the first year-to-year renewal instead of a month-to-month unless terminated by either party. But as you know, you can see in the agreement, either party has the right to terminate the agreement with a small notice period. So bottom line is we feel like we've been able to do a successful negotiation with the candidate within the guidelines presented by the board and the employment agreement. I'd be happy to try to answer any questions. Otherwise, I'm prepared to make a motion.
Do we have any discussion on the motion?
I have a
Question? Member Golden.
Larry, when does Ken's employment commence?
Tomorrow morning, bright and early.
Thank you. Ken, can you confirm that, please?
That's correct.
Oh,
All right, and we do have an agreement in Dirk's contract that he will spend up to 30 days doing training for Mr. Moen, and I just wanted to mention that. Any other discussion on the motion? Or, on the item?
No, but I'd just like to thank Dirk for his service, and good to know we're going to, as we do the transition well, and welcome aboard, Ken.
Do we have any public comment on this item? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion.
Also move. I would move that we approve the employment agreement and authorize Chairman Law to sign it as submitted.
I have a motion by Member Golden and a second by Treasurer Harvey that we accept the contract as written. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor of the motion? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None heard. Motion carried. And I'll just make a note here that I will take the copy of the document that
Madam,
I...
I'm ready to have you sign both copies so we can sign both if we have one if you'd like to. Just get this going.
That works for me. I brought my copy as well, so we will take care of that.
You've got two originals, one you can keep on. If that's
Right.
okay with you. Just before the fish gets away, I want to make sure.
Looks like you've done this before.
Send one off to the National Archives.
Mr. Moen, if you'd come forward.
Do we have to do public comment when the motion is over?
No,
Okay.
not right now. We'll do it at the end of the meeting.
I wasn't sure if it's a per item thing or just one.
We ask for it before we do the vote.
Okay.
Dirk, would you ask Mr. Takis if he has any questions regarding what's gone on? And let him know we've signed the documents.
Have any questions, if you want to just go ahead and sign the document, have Ken sign it, then we're in good shape.
All set.
Thank you.
In the record.
We will move on to item number 2 for possible action. Discussion to approve the clarification of the gate card rule allowing, quote, temporary contractors while performing work on the air side, end quote, to be issued gate cards. Mr. Zatilla.
Thank you. This is something that actually has been sitting around for 10 years. Unfortunately, there hasn't been any problem, but it has concerned me a bit because recently some FBOs are saying, well, you won't give an employee a card because it wasn't part of the list of approved people, so I'm going to call him a contractor, and now you have to give him a card. And my point with this is, actually, I was the one that wrote this originally 10 years ago, and it was not my intent to have this where an employee of an FBO was eligible for a card. And the reason for this, the only reason I'm pursuing this is that it concerns me that virtually everybody else on the airport, we have some control over their comings and goings, and they all have a vested interest in the airport, whereas an employee may get terminated for whatever reason, and it could be a bad reason, and that person walks off with a gate card, and we have no knowledge of that and no way to track that. And I don't know if it's true, but it's my feeling that this poses a liability to the airport if that person comes back and does whatever, commits a crime on the airport, and we're being blamed for giving him access to it. Whereas if the FBO directly gives that card to the person and terminates that person, they know that they need to notify us that, hey, we need to cut off this person's access. And that's the reason for the wording change that I'm asking for tonight. So if there's any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Any questions of Mr. Zatilla? None heard. Any public comment? Dr. Graber, if you'd state your name and spell your last name for the record.
I'm Brad Graber, Graber. at every step of the way, I think we should be considering on this airport to help the FBOs. They are small businesses. Everybody knows that general aviation is other than a thriving situation. So, I think we do ourselves well to, at every event, try and help out the FBO. I just see this as another burden on an FBO. I see the reduction to the absurd, thinking that an employee is going to come back here and give us a problem. So I just think we should consider leaving things such that we give every break we can to our people on the airport that are striving to make us a happy and going concern. Thanks for listening.
Thank you, sir. Any other comment? Mr. Golden.
Dirk, this is directed to you and also directed to my fellow authority members. Number one, when we revised the policy, there was a renewal for every gate card. That takes part of the risk away that you're portraying, because every year, if we don't have that gate card renewed with updated information, it gets turned off. I understand what you're saying, okay, that there is some risk there. I'd like council take us to weigh in on that risk, because obviously we have to weigh the equities of this matter in making a decision. I'll also state for my fellow airport authority members that we've just retained a individual to be our manager who's brand new. I think he should have some say in this matter, and I think he has some experience with gate cards and badged access at another airport. And perhaps this is the kind of discussion that should be shelved for a later date.
Do you want me first or Steve?
It makes no difference to me.
Steve, if you have any.
Yeah, I guess it's a good idea for us to be looking at making sure that gate cards for people that no longer should have them are somehow disabled. That's a good idea, and I don't know that it creates a direct liability to the airport, but it's an overall security concern for the airport, and so that's good. How it's done, there's probably a number of different ways it could be done. One is if you follow the recommendation that Dirk's making, then the FBO is directly accountable for the cards. If the FBO terminates the employee, the FBO can take away the card, or at least if they can't get the card back, they can call the airport manager and say, hey, disable this particular card number. Another way it could be done is the FBO could simply notify the airport manager when an employee or a contractor or whatever it is let go, so that we could determine whether or not that person should continue to have a gate card. If the person still has an aircraft on the field, obviously we don't want to disable the gate card. But if their only reason for being here was because they were employed by an FBO, well, then they probably don't have a reason to be here. So I kind of like Member Golden's idea of allowing Ken Moen to weigh in on this, because I'm sure that they had some of the similar security issues at Reno and at Stead.
Dirk, you want to go ahead and comment? And then I have a comment, and Mr. Moen, if you'd like to come to the table over there, we'll take your comments following that.
The only comment is that I'm still not totally comfortable with the idea of depending on the FBO to notify us if there's no, I'm sorry to say, if there's no real pressure on them to do so by them being responsible for that card. If we still have the responsibility for issuing that card, that kind of takes the pressure off of that FBO. And, if something happens and they, God forbid, say, oh, well, gee, I forgot to tell you, then we're still on the hook.
My concern is, with any other business, when somebody is hired, they get keys, they get other access vehicles, one way or the other, to the facility. And as a matter of course, in my history with private enterprise, when you fire somebody, you take back their keys, you take back their key card, and all of that sort of thing, and there's a record of it. adding the step for them to notify us about somebody leaving, I don't see that as onerous, but I also haven't had experience at airports as Mr. Moen has, but those are my comments. Generally speaking, you have a checkout sheet that has key numbers and all that sort of thing on it, and I don't see that adding the key card to that would be terribly onerous.
Let me,
Mr. Golden.
follow up on that. This is where I'm really confused, Dirk. I'm a business owner and have been a business owner for many, 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 many years, all too many years sometimes, I think. But when the employee walks out the door on their own volition, or when they're shown the door, we always collect the building keys, gate card, badge, access to the parking lot, you name it. Okay, I can't think of an employer who wouldn't do that. So why put this additional onus on the private sector? Hold on a second, okay? I just can't think of an employer who wouldn't do it. And then if the employer doesn't do it, they bought their own liability right there. Mm-hmm. So I just don't see tightening up this policy as any benefit to anyone whatsoever.
Just a quick response to that. If we sell somebody a gate card, that's their personal property. Whether it's active or not, it belongs to them. And so if I sell an employee a gate card, you have no right to take it from him.
Okay. Well, maybe that's where the problem is then. You shouldn't be selling employees gate cards. It should be, and the policy that we put forth, as I recall, covers tenants and aircraft owners, who are also tenants for that matter. It doesn't cover employees of FBOs. The FBO is the tenant. The FBO, therefore, should be the one getting the gate card.
That's what I am saying. Exactly. Yeah, you just confirmed it, so thank you.
Yeah, this is Bradley. If I can just maybe put it another way, the relationship that the airport has and the FBO have, that's a relationship. The relationship that the employee has is with the FBO, okay? So the airport doesn't have a direct relationship to an FBO employee. Therefore, I don't think we should be issuing anything to them directly. So, I mean, it seems to me the logic is that the airport works with the FBO. So, I mean, I support your approach to this.
I just wanted to ask Dirk to just quantify what the issue actually is. I mean, check me if I'm wrong, but the FBOs currently get multiple gate cards and they give them to their employees and they take them back from their employees when the employees are no longer working for them. How many people have the FBOs ditched off onto you to say you give them a gate card? At this instant, how many cards are there out there that we're talking about? Is it 1, 10, 100?
I have to guess, frankly, and my guess is, since I've been working here, probably 4 or 5, but I don't know how many before that for the last 10 years. I know there are other employees that have been here for a long time that have their own cards, and, you know, that's something that may have to be dealt with at some point, but that's the problem. I don't know. It's a loose cannon kind of thing.
Vice Chair Val.
Okay, so when I originally came to the airport, I was not associated with an FBO. I was told, go see the airport manager to get a gate card. I went in, I filled out the application, and I signed the application as the gate card holder agreeing to follow the rules. So there's pretty much every single gate card that's out there, there should be a signed contract by each of these gate card holders, what the terms and conditions are to use and access the airport. If I no longer have a relationship with the airport, no longer have a plane based here, or I'm not affiliated with an FBO, then I think the proper thing would maybe we amend that agreement that says that, okay, if you're no longer based here or anything like that, you should notify the airport manager, and then we revoke your card. But I can't think of any FBO that's on the field, excluding the issue of terminating an employee. Contracts often have finite terms. You hire somebody to go do some work on, restriping or something like that. They've got 30 days that they're going to work, and then at the 30 days, they no longer need access. I can't see any FBO that's currently here that wouldn't either upfront mention like, oh yeah, this gate card is temporary nature. It only needs to run for like 2 months or 3 months or something like that. Or we run into a situation where we do need to shit can somebody, and it's like, okay, let's go and revoke access to that card. That's not, if the FBO doesn't make that notification to the airport manager and say, kill this card off, then the FBO is taking on that liability right there, and there's no reason to change the policy to say that the FBO is liable because they already made themselves liable. So I don't see the point of updating this policy again to state kind of the obvious of the way that it's already working. And secondly, he mentioned earlier, we've never had this problem. This is a solution to a problem that doesn't exist. So us sitting here spending all this time to like, let's change the policy again, again, and again doesn't make any sense to me.
Member Golden.
We just revised the policy, was it the last meeting?
Yeah.
Or the
last regular.
Meeting before.
last regular meeting.
Right.
And quite candidly, this matter was addressed. Now Dirk's looking for clarification. I think before we make any decision on this, we get a copy of the policy in front of us for everyone to read, including the public, so we can make a clear, concise conveyance on the matter. There's no reason to rush this. And again, as I mentioned, Ken Moen has just joined us, and he has quite a bit of experience with badging over at Reno Tahoe and with gate cards. So I think he needs to weigh in on this, as employed by the airport. Not at this time.
Right. Mr. Moen, would you, I would consider obeying this to the next meeting so that you have a chance to look into it and
Chair
make a
Law, yeah, I
recommendation.
appreciate the opportunity to review the policy, and Dirk and I can discuss this as well and be able to come back to the board next meeting with a thought-out process.
Thank you.
We're talking about access control, and it's obviously different than a Part 139 airport, but I'd like the opportunity to weigh in on that.
Thank you. We will obey this item until the next meeting. Go ahead, Dirk.
I just, one more quick comment about what Vice Chair Vowell said. I know that nothing has happened to my knowledge because of this issue, but I would rather be proactive than deal with something that has already happened. I mean, and that's my intent here, was to prevent something from happening, or at least make the effort. So, thank you.
Thank you. We will move on to item F3. Any public comment on this that cannot be held until obeyed to next month? Okay. Item number 3 for possible action, discussion and approval of direction to consultant and engineer regarding the FAA AIP 31 Master Plan Project. Mr. Fitzgerald.
Brian Fitzgerald, Airport Engineer, Atkins. I just wanted to update the board. My memo that I sent regarding the Airport Master Plan, we held the second PAC meeting at the end of February, and it was well received for the PAC committee members. And then later on the evening, we had a public workshop, open house, for any member of the public to come by and see where we're at in the process. We had 5 individuals show up to that meeting, all positive responses at that point about the process. So it was well received, at least at that point. Just to let you know where we're at, we're in the process of working on existing conditions and then evaluating potential alternatives to the airport. It's still early on in that, so there's no direction as to what alternatives there may be for the airport. But the main thing that came out of the meeting was that the facilities that are at the airport right now meet the aircraft types that come in, and also for future amount of aircraft operations that are projected at this point. So the airport itself is in a good position right now to look at other items besides just the facilities. Economic development and so forth would be more of the focus at this point. Any questions on this?
Any questions, Mr. Fitzgerald, on this item? Thank you very much. Do you have anything further in the airport engineer's report?
Just another update on the taxiway project. Without any additional comments from the board or public, if they had any about that particular project, I'd like to submit it to the FAA for their review, which shouldn't take very long, and then request for advertise for bids so that we can get it accomplished in the month of April. And then we can have open bids, and then by the May meeting, we would be able to award pending FAA funding to the parent low bidder on that project. So if the board has any comments on that, I did send in my packet the phasing diagrams for that, and if you don't have any additional comments on that, then I'll send it off to the FAA for their review.
I would ask that you go over the closure issues before we finish with this item.
Absolutely. Obviously, as a one-runway airport, doing any work within 250 feet of the center line requires restrictions or closure. And as this project works up to the edge of the runway, all the taxiway connectors that'll be done in phase one will require the runway to be closed. And Michael Golden brought up several months ago about doing night work. And the work that will be associated in phase one will be done at night. That would be for the crack sealing, which is the first item that would be done, because it can be done with light plants. That's easily done. The second item would be the seal coat of the taxiway connectors, which would require approximately a 24-hour closure while it's placed and cures. That could be done at day or night, but preferably during the daytime. And then after that would be the striping of those areas so that it can be usable once it's reopened to the airport for use. And that would be approximately 2 24-hour periods or a total of a 48-hour period for the overall closure of the airport while that work is being done. But during the times of the crack seals, they'll be closed at night, 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, somewhere in that area to 4 or 5 in the morning when there's very little operations at that point. Any questions on that phasing?
Vice Chair.
These closures, are they complete closure of the runway or just closure while there's actual men and materials out there working?
It would be complete closure of the runway most likely, because the contractors have the ability to do a lot of crack sealing during the course of one day or work period. And so in order to do a displaced threshold to allow the runway to be open for either end may not be reasonable for the 2 or 3 hours that would be available. And then once you're working on the middle area, a Alpha 2, Delta 2, all the way to Alpha 5, the high speed 4, would require closure regardless, because you cannot displace it enough to actually have even a Cessna take off.
But is the closure after they've completed the work and it's still drying? Is it closed at that point, the actual runway, or just the taxiways, or all of it?
The crack seal itself dries rather quickly. You can drive over it within a couple hours for the most part. And during the summertime with higher temperatures, it's a little bit easier to do. Essentially in the morning when they're done, say 4 o'clock in the morning, you could probably drive over it by 6, 7 o'clock in the morning, no problem in certain areas. And we would have it laid out in terms of the schedule as what they'll be working on, when it can be accessed, and we'll make that available to everybody so that if we have to, we can keep a certain area closed, because they may only have worked on 2 taxiway connectors for that time frame versus the whole airport. And so it'd be more like a rolling closure during some of this work, but at night while they're working up near the runway, they would have to close the runway.
And there will be NOTAMs and so forth issued?
Yes, all the other precautions, NOTAMs, information on the AWAS, flyers, websites, things like that. We'll make sure that everybody's aware of these rolling closures.
Thank you. Any other questions, Mr. Fitzgerald? Thank you very much. Airport Manager's Report. Dirk?
Thank you. Okay, we did our first aircraft operation count for the month of February. I believe these will be quite a bit lower than the annual average due to the winter weather conditions. The counts are as follows. We had 38 jets, 19 turboprop, 28 piston twin, and 437 piston singles for a total of 522 operations for the month. These counts were my intent, and that's again up to our new manager, but the intent was to do these monthly and give some nice, very accurate numbers of the aircraft operations. Next item, good news, no accidents or incidents in the last month, thank goodness. I think we had enough of that for a while. And we had 2 snow events that required plowing, the one on the 2nd of the month and one on the 16th. The 16th was a little more heavy than usual. That was quite a chore getting cleaned up, and I know it was a little inconvenient for some people just because there's only so much we could get done out there. Next item, in the terminal building, we've been working on it. I think most of you have seen that. Well, all of you have seen it. The insulation and drywall project is, the drywall is about 95% complete now. And it'll need taping, texturing, and painting afterwards. And we expect that to get done in about 2 months. This project was initiated partly for aesthetics, but mainly for cost reduction. Even though it's not complete, our heating costs went down about $100 a month over the previous year. And we also just installed a Wi-Fi controllable thermostat, and this will let us to make more accurate settings and cut our costs a little bit further on that. Plus the ability, if there happens to be a meeting going on or something that we didn't know about, and somebody calls Gary up and says, "Oh my God, it's freezing in here," he can get on his phone and turn up the heat for him. So it's a pretty cool little gadget and not very expensive, like $125. And last thing is I would just like to thank everybody very much for allowing me to help the airport for these few months and also for putting up with me. And I really appreciate the opportunity to lend a hand here. And thank you all very much.
I thank you as well, because I'm certainly glad I didn't have to be sitting in that seat for 6 months.
Thank you for your service, Dirk.
Absolutely. Next is the legal counsel's report. Is Steve still on the phone?
I'm still here.
Okay.
Just real quick, I put a note in the briefing, in the council briefing, that our proposed budget needs to be filed with the tax department. However, in my memo, I have the wrong date. It's due to be filed with the Department of Tax by April 15, not April 21. And the final needs to be filed with the Department of Tax by June 1, or actually I think it's June 3rd, but we need to approve it by June 1. So the final budget we should approve in our regular meeting in May. That's all I got.
Where are you at, Steve?
Pardon me?
He asked where you were. We told him where you were.
I'm actually in Maui right now working on my parents' taxes.
All right, and I might add, Steve, that we have a meeting set up with Beth tomorrow for a budget meeting, and that will include Dirk, myself, Mr. Harvey, and our new manager.
Sounds great.
Moving on to the treasurer's report, Mr. Harvey.
I was going to say that tomorrow we're meeting about the budget. Oh, but you already said that.
Yeah.
So thank you, Madam Chair. Anyway, I presented the balance sheet and some of the numbers to you. Everything is online. We're within $1,000 right now, profit and loss versus actual. This time of year, you know, there's some differences, things like personal property taxes when they're collected, the timing of a number of the items, a little behind on the cost of our labor, only because of the change we've had right now. That'll catch up now that we have Ms. Ramon back on board. But if you have any questions specifically, let me know, and I can take a look at that.
Are there any questions of Mr. Harvey? Hearing none, we will move forward. Are there any reports from authority members on non-action items? None heard. Any public comment? I don't think so. They're all gone. Any agenda items for the next regular meeting, please send them. The email address for our manager is not going to change. It'll just be the person receiving them. So if you have ideas for the next agenda, items that need to be included, or questions that you want to have addressed, please direct those to the manager, myself, or Steve, and we'll get those on the next agenda. Is there anything else to come before the committee before adjournment?
I'd just like to thank everybody who was involved on the subcommittee level to get us where we are tonight, and that's all I need to say.
I agree with that totally. All right, anything else before we close the meeting? We are adjourned.